So here we are in the mezzanine of the marvelous Serralves library. Beautiful work here hanging by Tobias Weberger. And we are entering the exhibition Estas AQUI. You are here, which is an exhibition that celebrates 20 years of performing art program at Serralves, so starting in 1999. Before talking about the exhibition and maybe talking about what Serralves has done for these last 20 years with performing art, dance, performance, music, or even discipline that we don't have a name for right now. We need to understand that the history of contemporary art, if we look back, started on the stage with the movement, with Dada, in Zurich, at Cabaret Voltaire. And at this moment, artists, such as Richard Hulsenbeck, who we didn't even know at the time that we would change the world and change the course, the journey, the path of modern art, brought to the stage some of the most radical work that the new 20th century has ever seen. I don't even believe that people at the time thought it was works of art. But from moment, from Dada, the history of modernity, meaning the entire 20th century, up to now, beginning of the 21st century, has been influenced by this passage between the discipline, between dance, between film and art, between art and music. It is absolutely unthinkable to understand art being made today without a true understanding of this cross and multidisciplinary history. There is no surrealism with no performances. There is no Dada, as we say, without performing art, without the stage. There is no Oskar Schlemmer. There is no modern avant-garde that at one point or another, has not interacted with the notion of the performance. So when you look at an institution like Serralves, like many institutions in the world today, we are all trying to document, to understand how do we write this history. With visual art, it's easy because you have objects, painting, sculpture. That's easy to document. We know how to do that. We are learning about performing art, but what this exhibition is showing is an attempt to actually document passage between the discipline. And I truly believe that these 20 years at Serralves are a huge part of Serralves' currency, Serralves' reputation. The reason why Serralves as a museum is one of the leading contemporary art museums in the world is because Serralves, since 1999, as this exhibition demonstrates, has welcomed all these artists. And I have here a few books just to illustrate that. You know, if I look at the 20th century, an artist like Merce Cunningham, one of the most important choreographer of the 20th century, working with partners like John Cage, the musician, but also not only musician. Merce Cunningham's work, his importance, come from one place, a meeting place that was Black Mountain College in the United States. And there he met with the likes of Jasper Jones and Bob Rauschenberg. And from this collaboration, the art history has changed. So if you come to the exhibition, you will see documentation about Merce Cunningham and his collaboration with Rauschenberg, Jasper Jones, Andy Warhol. Then you have another generation, like Trisha Brown, that totally changed dance by, again, working with visual artists, thinking of dance beyond the stage, in galleries, on rooftops, and bringing to dance and performance everyday gesture. In the same way, artists at the time were bringing to the studio or to art making everyday objects. Same thing with Yvonne Reiner. So to understand the art of today, you need to understand this connection. The fact that the art cannot exist trapped in disciplines. They need to open up. So if you look at this exhibition, it starts in 1999. And it starts with for me, a very interesting point, with an exhibition called Circa 1968. And Circa 1968 brought together at Serralves all the visual artists who actually interacted with performer, who changed the notion or understanding of art because they understood this history of passages between the disciplines. And actually fascinating to look at the list of performers that were invited during during the time of circa 1968. Then if you look at this history, you also understand, if you go through this exhibition, that dance, choreography, and music are all present. That the most important dancer, choreographer, and musician have come through Serralves. If you look at this wall, you will see names, documentation of some of the most groundbreaking performing artists of our time. It starts there with someone named Charlemagne Palestine, whose work is actually difficult to define because it has installation, it has performance, but it's really in between. Then you have Xavier Leroy. Xavier Leroy, as much as Meg Stewart, have changed the history of postmodern dance. So even before going there, I would like to point at one image here, which is very important to understand this history. This woman, this image here, that shows the Japanese artist Murakami doing a performance where he's jumping through sheets of paper, going through the canvas, going through representation in post-war Japan. Why is that so important? Because in post-war Japan, representation, traditional art, after the bomb, after Hiroshima, after human disaster, representation that, as it existed before, was absolutely impossible. So breaking through the canon was a necessity. And what performing art have done across the history of the 20th century and 21st century is to challenge all the canon of art history. I am not going to list all the artists who are here, but when you walk around, you see, as I said, Xavier Leroy, Marianne Hamacher, one of the most important experimental musician in electronic music. I see Gavin Bryars, one of the most important classical composers right now. I mentioned Trisha Brown earlier. Here, you had Trisha Brown at Serralves in 2011. Pauline Oliveros. All the disciplines are represented here. You realize that not only you have the history of Serralves' relationship with performing art, it's a bigger story. You have the history of the most groundbreaking practices that initiated in the mid-20th century. Trisha Brown, Charlemagne Palestine, Yvonne Reiner for dance, Xavier Leroy, Emmanuel Ruin, Esther Salmon to go to the present. You have an entire genealogy of gestures that are here embedded in the history of Serralves. For me, these gestures, these videos, the fact that the DNA of his choreographer are here, is part of the collection of Serralves. It's something that is part of the foundation of the museum. Same thing in terms of music. You had Marianne Mascher, Ryoji Ikeda, Eliane Radig, Keiji Aino, from experimental electronic music in the tradition of John Cage to Keiji Aino, one of the most important noise rock musician out of Japan, who was actually here a few months ago. You have an entire line of musicians that have revolutionized music. And I would say that if you want to understand this connection, there is one iconic program at Serralves, a signature program that to this day is still looked at by many other of our sister institutions as a pioneer program. And it's the Museum as Performance, during which the entire institution becomes a stage, where you have music, performance everywhere in the museum, implementing this kind of utopia that started on the stage of Cabaret Voltaire in Zurich with Richard Husselbeck, that all the art should come together.